Hi, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers Journal of the Vaccine Year. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, May 7th, and we are joined by our all-star panel of top local journalists, Jade Martinez-Pogue from Newshawk, Nick Welsh, executive editor of the Santa Barbara Independent, and Josh Molina, who covers politics and policy for Newshawk when he's not podcasting. Thank you all for coming. So we saw these astonishing number actually this week that the actual number of deaths in the pandemic in the United States is closer to 900,000, nearly twice as many as we thought, and that the vaccine supply is now outstripping the demand. It doesn't look like nationally we're going to achieve herd immunity. What's the latest locally, Jade, on the vaccine and supply, demand, and the availability of appointments?
Yeah, so, we are kind of struggling with meeting the demand for the first few months that the vaccinations or the vaccines rolled out. But now more and more clinics are opening to walk-in appointments, like sometimes the day of, because they're just not filling the appointments like they need to be. Right now, almost 44% of the county's eligible population, so 16 and up, is vaccinated, and 47.8, so almost 48% has received at least one dose. But that also means that like 53% of the county hasn't even gotten vaccinated at all. So I think public health is really trying to make more clinics available in different areas at times that work for people, to just try and persuade people to go get the vaccine.
There's walk-up, availability, I guess. And Josh, I know you watched every minute of my hard-hitting interview with Hilda Maldonado, superintendent of the Santa Barbara School Board, but she said they're going to have a program, I guess, when the 12 to 16 vaccine eligibility comes, that they're going to be taking students to Cottage and elsewhere. What's your sense of vaccine hesitancy among parents and so on? Is it like a Rich Montecito thing? People are worried about vaccinations, or is it more in the Latino community where people are resistant? What do your sources say?
Well, as you know, Jerry, I believe the science, so I'm a 100% advocate for vaccinations for everyone. There's a lot of skepticism among people, even among science believers, about getting the vaccine. There are those who believe that we just don't know, it's too early, we don't know long-term side effects. There's young women in particular who are sort of concerned about getting them because of future reproductive issues that could come up. I think among the Latino community, I can't speak because it's very diverse, but yes, I think there's some skepticism there. I think also now, because so many people are getting it, there's a feeling, well, I don't need to get it because everyone else is getting it, and there'll be herd immunity. So I think there are reasons why people don't want to get it, and I think that over time we're going to probably eventually see an increasing amount of people who are eventually just going to give in and say, I'm just going to do it and get it out of the way. But among parents, I don't, I think that, I'm thinking about my circles. I think most of the parents would say, yeah, once they drop the age to 12, they're going to get their kids vaccinated because they're all vaccinated for every other thing, starting out when they're, young. So why not? So I think that most parents probably will, particularly if they want their kids to go back to school in person.
Nick, go ahead.
What I heard from 4th District Supervisor Bob Nelson a couple of weeks ago. I mean, he was expressing frustration that there was not enough effort made to get the farmers enlisted in this and trying to get the farm workers signed up for vaccines through the actual farmers. There was they would go through the Farm Bureau, the county would go through the Farm Bureau, or a couple of organizations, but they weren't going through the individual farmers who have, like, say, 100 or 2,000, 1,000 or 2,000 employees, and could actually deliver them in a concentrated way. I think it would be really interesting to look at, where are we seeing the greatest degree of hesitancy? I think it's going to be up in North County. I mean, one of the ideas I've heard, this was from Steve Lavanino, this district supervisor, goes, "Look, everybody up here has already gotten sick. When you think so many people have gotten infected, you think, okay, well, I'm immune. And so I don't really feel the same urgency to go, get a vaccine. But the problem there is, of course, you're opening the door for some of the variants.
Right, opening, and exactly, and the antibodies don't last that long. Once you've had it anyway, do they, Jay?
I don't think so. So
3 months.
How long?
3 months. But I did have a reader email me, and he has a synagogue or something. He wanted to see what the percentage of, like, fully vaccinated and people who have gotten the virus, to try and figure out some formula to, I guess, reopen more. But just that is so
Henry,
different.
Henry, come here.
There's no way to tell, and you can't really just rely on people who have gotten sick.
I apologize. Henry's like Alfred Hitchcock. He makes like a cameo appearance. Henry, stop. In every show. Okay.
Is that your demographic, Jerry? People who know who Alfred Hitchcock is?
Well, Josh, I think any erudite, well-educated person who presumes to explain complex issues to others would know who Alfred is.
Oh, wow. Look at Jerry shift levels right there. Okay. Sorry, Jerry. Didn't mean to go there.
All right. Let's go on to the next big story of the week, which Meagan Harmon, in somewhat of a surprise, stomped Das Williams in the attempt to get seated on the California Coastal Commission. Jade, you had a story about that. What happened? How did she do that?
To be honest, I wasn't completely surprised that they chose her, or the governor chose her. She got the nomination from all 3 counties in the Tri-County area, which surely helped her stand out.
Which nobody else did. Right?
Yeah. And I think probably a lot of it also has to do with the fact that Das has made a lot of enemies up in Sacramento, which
not to mention in Santa Barbara
and around. But yeah, I wasn't too surprised by the fact, but
yeah, I actually thought it was going to be the woman that works for Monique, whose name escapes me at the moment, from Ventura. But Nick, how much of an anti-DOS thing was this, or an anybody but DOS thing, do you think?
Well, I think that Das didn't do himself any favors. There was clearly an organized effort. Susan Jordan, who is a coastal activist of some renown, was no fan of Das's. She ran against him before. She felt slimed by him. She is very close with Sarah Miller McCune, who has certainly led the charge against Das in terms of vaccinating Florida chaps. And there's a whole group of anti-cannabis, or they don't like to be called anti-cannabis activists, but that they think that Das has sort of sold out the north and the south ends of the county and the nostrils of people who live there on behalf of the cannabis industry. And Das, he's a very skilled political animal, but one of the skills he doesn't have is the white man's overbite, where you kind of feel the other person's pain. And he's not a great pain feeler, and he's really good at telling people that if what they said they wanted was done, it would only make their problems worse. And why, the problem can't be solved until much further down the road, all of which makes people just get angry. So I think the cannabis issue has really hurt him, but I've told I'm told by people in Sacramento, it should not be restricted to simply cannabis. That he, he's been around a while, and so
We've got a lot of
really what
baggage.
happened. He used to be known as a young man in a hurry, and and Meagan Harmon is certainly a young woman in a hurry, and I think she stomped him. But
How
we
come Nick
all
got in?
look at Meagan, and we think, the Dead Sea parts, where whenever she comes into the room, she got appointed to the city council, she got to run again without any opposition, and it looks like she's gonna run again without any opposition. What I'm told is that she worked her ass off on this, and she worked her ass off for about 6 months campaigning like she's never had to campaign before. And as Jade pointed out, she was the only one ever to get, the recommendation from 3 counties.
Josh, now that Nick has sung the praises of Meagan Harmon, I'm sure you'll want to second that motion. And
Well, I'm just stunned that Nick's riveting analysis of Das Williams' flaws did not make it into their editorial endorsing Das Williams for
Oh.
county
Josh,
supervisor.
if you actually had read the editorial, which went on for like 4 blocks, you would have seen that it had all of that in there.
Okay.
But then said, even saying so on balance.
Yes, it's the only editorial where the person who didn't get endorsed actually used it in their own promotional material to say, vote for me. So yes, I do understand that.
And it was actually used by his opponent against
Yeah.
him.
what's your take, Josh? On the
I think that Meagan Harmon is extraordinarily hardworking, and she's a fantastic communicator. And I think that she put those two together and was able to influence the right people in Sacramento who could see her for her strengths. And she does light up the room. She's a great talker, and I think she makes a great first and second impression. And I think that probably, I don't want to really say that it was the cannabis letter writing campaign. I don't really see that as being the thing that sunk Das. I think Das spent 6 years in the state legislature. And I think that probably those actions were some of the things that may have come back to haunt him. He had his office changed, removed, he was reassigned. He had some controversies with his voting record. And I think that is some baggage that comes with him, whereas Meagan Harmon is fresh, and she's obviously going to come in with a clean slate, and we'll see how she does.
Yeah. You're saying she has no Samsonite.
No, I
mean, but I have to say, I hear what you're saying, but when the governor is facing a recall campaign because he went out to the French Laundry with his good buddy, whose birthday it was, who was the chief cannabis lobbyist in town, and that same lobby company has offices in El Paseo here, and the person with whom Das was exchanging cozy emails was a client of that lobbyist. I think that would just bring up way too many uncomfortable issues for the governor right now.
Well, and the other thing is that very lobbying company also has a client that's trying to build a great big D-cell plant, which is very controversial, which the Coastal Commission got to weigh in on. And the governor's behind it. So it'll be very interesting to see what Meagan Harmon does. The Susan Jordans of the world, they went all in, Annie Bardock, others for Meagan. And, Meagan is a little bit of a chameleon politically. She sort of presented herself originally as kind of a moderate, center-left, pro-business person. And then she turned out to be, the biggest down the line Democratic hack you can imagine. So I want to find out what she said to anybody about where she is on that D-cell plant, and then see how that all works out. And then Meagan also was in the news for leading the charge for hazard pay or hero pay for grocery workers, a big controversy. And Josh, she said it was a matter of equity, which really had me scratching my head. I guess I'm misunderstanding equity. What was that all about?
Well, she did the classic thing of, we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, even though we can't give everybody who deserves it hero or hazard pay. That should not stop us from giving this specific industry an increase. And so what they're doing is they're passing an ordinance that's going to mandate private employers who have who own grocery stores to pay their bills or to pay their employees an extra $5 an hour for up to 60 days. They have to have at least 300 employees nationally and 1 employee locally. And so that's what the city council passed. The problem with that is that the city council did it without any data on which grocery stores are actually going to be impacted. And it's, quite frankly, it's a little bit offensive. I'm not going to talk about, journalists, but there's a lot of industries out there who had to work every day and who are considered frontline hero workers as well. I got an email from some bankers who talked about having to, exchange cash and, things that transactions at a bank, and no one's advocating for them. She was talking about equity, saying, equity is not about giving everybody the same. Equity is about helping people who need the help with additional support and resources. I didn't particularly think her analogy worked because she was applying it to like private business as opposed to the true meaning of equity, which, involves people and social justice and people of color. And that's a real valid point, equity and being able to reach out and help people who need it. But to supply like a one-size-fits-all definition of equity to grocery store workers. The other thing is, so Tri-County Produce or a smaller local company, I mean, they're just as much, if you're going to call them heroes or grocery store workers, well, how can you say the one at Trader Joe's is, but then the one who works at the Chapala Market or Santa Cruz Market is not? And it's uneven. If we're going to try to say, hey, these grocery store workers need $5 extra an hour, well, I would imagine that those grocery store workers who work at the Chapala Market, who work at Santa Cruz Market, they're serving largely a Hispanic community. They probably need it as much as somebody who works at Bristol Farms.
Yeah.
And it just
And
gets
they
very
probably
complex.
are, a lot of the grocery stores are unionized, and if you're unionized,
Well, that's
presumably
what
you're
the whole
making
thing was
better
about.
wages.
I mean,
Huh?
that's what the whole thing was about. It's a statewide campaign by the union. With this, we're what, the 30th or 31st city where
Yeah.
this has happened, and she was just shilling for the union.
But here's the deal. I mean, Kroger, the Kroger chain made 100%, more in profit this year than they did in the past. They had a pretty abysmal record in terms of, providing their own workers hazard pay. Trader Joe's, for example, increased the pay by $4 an hour and then dropped it down to $2. So Trader Joe's, which is famously not unionized, actually had a really good or very decent track record in terms of, taking care of its employees here with some sort of hazard pay recognition. But I think that, when you talk to the council members privately, what they really wanted to do was stick it to Kroger's, and they wanted to stick it to Jeff Bezos and Whole Foods. And, you're right. I mean, it's like Michael Jordan, the council member, gets up there and says, my daughter comes home from work at college and she has to shower,
Boy, I
hose
thought
herself off outside before she comes in the house.
that was a great point. I thought, and I thought he took the correct vote in the thing. I mean, the one thing Meagan has proved masterful at is spending other people's money, which I think she's really been good at. But yeah, I didn't think this was the greatest thing in the world. But how are they going to enforce it? Is what I don't understand. So what if,
That's a really good question.
Well, I mean, there wasn't a lot of specifics at this
I mean, it
meeting.
was such a shoddy legislative thing. As you say, there was no data. We didn't know, we don't know what it was going to affect, who was going to affect.
City Attorney Arlo Cologne said during the meeting, I don't know. And they got a list from somebody in the community, and he said there were errors on it, so I couldn't, but I mean, the only list provided was from an outside the city perspective. And so there's a rush here, there was no research, and it goes to the larger issue of just, who on the council is gonna bring these issues to the fore and offer a counter perspective so you can have a vibrant discussion. Jordan did. Eric Friedman's going to get a $5 raise at Trader Joe's because of this.
Well, he
wasn't there.
recused himself. He recused himself.
Yeah, he was not there, of course. He had to step down. So I don't know. I mean, the more Doss was a young man in a hurry, super ambitious, and with success comes more criticism and oversight, and you're under more scrutiny. And we're seeing Meagan Harmon now ascend to that. And we're going to see a lot of those people who privately have concerns about her becoming more comfortable expressing them publicly. So it'd be interesting to watch to see how it unfolds and she manages her political future.
Hey, Jade, you got to find out whether the grocery workers made a call to the governor's office on behalf of Megan when that happened. All right, fire season is here. What was your story about what the firefighters are saying, Jade?
Yeah, so they held an in-person press conference on Monday, basically announcing the beginning of fire season, so May 3rd, which was 2 weeks sooner than it was last year. It's looking to be a pretty dry year. I don't think we're expecting much more rainfall than we've already had. So essentially, they were just telling everyone to be prepared, educate on the, evacuation plans, and just be ready because there's potential for a bad
Yeah,
fire year.
the drought is, the 1,000-year drought that Nick declared was over. It was, of course, never over. Hey, back to the council real quick. The city attorney really took it in the shorts on this big vacation rental lawsuit that's been going on for a number of years. What was that, Nick? What was the outcome?
It's a really big deal. The Court of Appeals ruled that if the city wanted to restrict or ban vacation rentals in its coastal zone, it needed to get a local coastal permit from the California Coastal Commission. Now, the city basically has an outright ban on vacation rentals because they're trying to protect their housing stock. And that is, a legitimate goal. And they were worried that they were losing housing to vacation rentals. And a guy named Theo Fracke, who runs a number of vacation rentals, said, this is a bunch of BS. You've been taking my money for years and years and years. You've been, I've been paying taxes, and you can't just change the rules on me. And so he got a good attorney, and the attorney said, you want to do this, anything that changes the intensity of the use in the coastal zone is a development, and as such needs a permit from the Coastal Commission. And the Coastal Commission is not so much worried about the housing shock, but the access to the coast by people who are not as rich, not so rich that they can afford hotel rooms. So it's coastal access versus housing affordability. And in this particular case, the Coastal Commission said, and the court backed them up.
Yeah.
And so this is going to be a tough one actually for Meagan, because she's going to have to deal with that.
Right. And Josh, this litigation has been going on for 4 or 5 years. It went to the Court of Appeal, and it's a published opinion, which is a big deal. I mean, they mean that makes law when they say it's a published opinion. The city council, went for one appeal. Will they go to the Supreme Court on this, do you think, or is this a done deal now? And how much does this all cost,
Well, you made a comment about Meagan Harmon being really good with spending other people's money, but the city attorney's office is.
Henry, she lives here. He barks at my wife. I don't know. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
The city attorney's office is probably number one at spending the city's money in terms of the litigation and lawsuits that they've lost. I think Ariel Kalan will probably just decide to let it go because
losses.
It's to take it to the what is it, the California Supreme Court?
Yeah.
Would that be the next stage?
Yeah.
Would probably not be looked upon very well by the council because there's been a number of cases that the city has lost. So yeah, I mean, I think Theo Kraki filed this in 2016, and it's just finally, well, they lost already in Ventura Court. This was the appeal. So
Yeah. So where do you think, so what will Megan do? Because there is a conflict. Would she take the city position or would she take the Coastal Commission position on this?
she'll take the position the Democratic Party tells her to take. So probably
which would
the
be
city position.
I think she's gonna take the city position here because she's more, obviously, she's very much of an advocate on behalf of city housing stock.
This is James Fankner's revenge.
It is James Fankner's revenge.
Shout out James Fankner. All right, real quick, a couple things. Nick, we lost 2 Elvises. Is that what you allege? What do you mean?
For me, this was a week. We lost, the other week I came down, I wrote a story about a guy who's out on the street about 6:30 in the morning singing Elvis's songs, and he is a window washer. He's been an itinerant window washer here in town since 1986. He is a really good singer, and he goes by the name of Elvises de la Rey, and the voice of the king, and he does nothing but Elvis, and he's good. And so he is packing it up. His mom is in her 80s. She lives in Florida. She needs somebody to take care of him. So she's going down there. The other Elvis was Gerald Perlin, who for many, many years was one of the more outlandish prosecuting attorneys in the district attorney's office. He was very fond of gold lame jumpsuits. He would show up. He filed a fictitious business name change to change his name to Elvis. And he showed up in court wearing a gold lame jumpsuit. But he was more famous because he was the one who prosecuted or co-prosecuted the case against former UCSB Chancellor Robert Huttenbach for fraud and tax evasion charges, and found him guilty. The jury found him guilty. He was, I would call him up and he would sing songs to me. He would sing all this stuff. You call up his answering machine, it would be, "I'm sorry, Gerald Perlin's not in right now. I'm out fighting crime." He was a Dick Tracy character. He was the hardest working man in that department, and everybody was public enemy number one, and he took everybody to the wall. He was not well liked by the defense bar because they thought he was completely unreasonable. So he died this past week.
All right, 2 Elvises. All right, Josh, you had Graham Farrar, the king of cannabis in Santa Barbara County on your podcast, a man whose praises have been sung in many publications. We name no names. Did you happen to ask him about the $500 million he just made selling his license on this small family-owned business that the Board of Supervisors opened the door for?
No, I did not call him the cannabis king anywhere in anything I wrote about him. I did call him the cannabis entrepreneur. He said that, yes, this infusion of money is capital for the company's expansion throughout California. He said his situation's different than what happened with the license on Upper State Street because he's still very much involved with his dispensary, pharmacy. He's going to open one in Isla Vista, in San Ynez. They're looking to expand throughout California. So, he said this is an infusion of capital. They're going public on the Canadian stock market. They can't do it here because it's not federally legal. So, Graham really strikes a chord as like a really smart data person who got into cannabis. But he assured me that this is still a local cannabis company.
All right. And where's the podcast again? Oh, it's on Newshawk now. Newshawk.
You set me up for that?
No, I just realized, I just remembered that that's, I'm sure there's a backstory on that, but we don't have time for it. But anyway, where can people find the podcast?
They can find it on all streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple and SoundCloud and Google. Now available on Mondays on the Newshawk's website, excerpts of it, and my website, santabarbaratalks.com. And this week I have your friend, Randy Rouse, who's going to spill the tea on the mayoral race and why he believes he's the most qualified person. And not to make it the Meagan Harmon show, but he goes in on Meagan Harmon's grocery store proposal. So that's worth watching.
All right. All right. Jade, what are you working on for next time? I know that you're probably going to spend most of your weekend listening to the Josh's entire podcast archive. But
he's already done that, Jerry. Come on.
What else are you working on?
I have the Board of Supervisors are meeting next week. They're going to talk about the micro enterprise home kitchens again. So we'll see if they'll allow that. But nothing too exciting that I know of yet.
And how's that budget yarn coming along? We're looking forward to don't get spun on this business of the cannabis revenues saving all of our lives like others do. All right. Thank you, Jade, Nick, and Josh for taking the time, and we will see you next time on Newsmakers. Stay safe.